What are naked carbs doing to your blood sugar? Is it bad to drink coffee on an empty stomach? Can stress spike your blood sugar? All that and more on this episode of the Healthiest You. Your blood sugar is a big deal. It's responsible for a lot of things, from your everyday energy to your mood and potential for developing diseases in the future. Keeping your blood sugar in check is important to your overall health and longevity. We are focusing on women's health and wellness on the Healthiest You podcast. Whether you're on your way to work or enjoying a cup of coffee, take this time to focus on your health. Here to talk about how blood sugar affects the brain and body is Dr. Erin Scholten, endocrinologist with the Diabetes and Metabolism Center at Lehigh Valley Health Network. Dr. Scholten, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Starting off with the basics, why is blood sugar so important to your body and its functions? And how does insulin play a role in regulating blood sugar levels?
Yeah, so blood sugar, or glucose as we call it, is important for every function in our body. So it's the primary source of energy for our cells. And insulin acts as the key that allows glucose to enter our cells, to be used for energy, and to be stored for later use between meals when we're not eating.
Okay. Well, thank you for breaking that down. Now, what are some signs a woman may be insulin resistant, as we're talking about what insulin is? If you could explain that.
Yeah, definitely. So after your cells use whatever glucose they need for energy, and then whatever they don't need, they convert to storage form. Once that storage form is filled, any leftover glucose is then converted to fat. So when your blood sugar levels are high and you have this extra glucose, whenever your storage is filled, then insulin's going to convert the process of making that glucose into fat. And that tends to happen in the liver and around our organs. So when you have that buildup of extra fat, it leads to insulin resistance. So then your cells become less responsive to insulin when you have this insulin resistance. So your overall insulin levels are higher, your blood sugars can be higher. And so it can lead to, feelings of hunger. So higher insulin levels trigger more feelings of hunger and cravings, especially for more carbohydrate-rich foods. It can lead to weight gain. So when that excess glucose is stored as fat, can lead to central weight gain. Can lead to decreases in energy. When you have higher blood sugar and higher insulin levels, there's more fluctuations in your blood sugar. So fatigue, low energy. Insulin resistance is also a major part of PCOS, which affects women of reproductive age. So, in addition to insulin resistance, these women can experience irregular menstrual cycles, infertility, increase in acne, hirsutism, which is abnormal hair growth. We can all see that, in the presence of insulin resistance.
Is there any way to reverse insulin resistance?
Yeah, absolutely. So, targeting insulin resistance and prediabetes early is really the key to improving your metabolic health and reducing your risk of diabetes. So certainly focusing on dietary changes are a major key. Foods that are higher in simple sugars sugars and simple carbohydrates are going to spike your blood sugars more, which leads to more insulin, which leads to more storage forms, which is, higher fat levels. So trying to prevent the blood sugar spikes by looking at our diets is one of the key steps. So avoiding the simple sugars and carbs, trying to eat more healthy, like vegetables that are high in fiber, proteins, healthy fats. Looking at lifestyle modifications is huge. So how can you incorporate regular physical activity that can help your body respond better to your insulin levels? So any sorts of physical activity. I always tell my patients prioritizing sleep and stress management. So and one night of bad sleep can raise your hunger hormones. So that stimulates your appetite to eat more. So getting adequate sleep can really help lower insulin levels and help with insulin resistance. So you think about somebody who has chronic sleep deprivation, what that can do to their hormone imbalance. And then stress management. So how can we, manage our stress better? So stress, whether it's physical stress or psychological stress, it can increase your cortisol levels, which can, increase your blood sugar and insulin resistance. So it is sort of a multifaceted approach.
Definitely.
Looking, at all the different parts of your diet and lifestyle that, can help lead to just an overall healthier lifestyle.
Well, those are all, I think, great tips. So, limiting the carbs, limiting the sugar, getting that physical fitness in, so important. And of course, sleep. I think we can all admit we're different people when we have a lack of sleep. I know I am. So continuing on with our discussion about blood sugar, specifically coffee. Let's talk about that. Are you a coffee person?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, me too. Do you usually start your day with a cup of coffee, or do you usually have breakfast first?
I guess it depends on my morning, but I'd say typically coffee, just, I'm getting my kids ready and things like that. So I do typically start with coffee. I think it's more of a ritual at this point.
Sure. It's part of the routine.
Yeah, exactly.
The smell of the coffee brewing, nothing beats it. It's like that morning wake up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it feels like doing something for yourself a little bit.
It's like an act of self-care before you're taking care of the kids and everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or work responsibilities, checking that email, just taking a moment to pause and make that cup of coffee.
Yes.
So how do you make your coffee? I'm curious.
Yeah. So, there is a debate about whether coffee affects blood sugar. And I think it's very individualized. I think some people are a little bit more sensitive and they might see an increase in their blood sugar just with coffee. But I think the biggest thing is what you put in your coffee. So
interesting. Okay.
I think black coffee alone for most people is not going to affect their blood sugar. But when you start adding sugar and creamers that have high sugar content, I think that's where it can really affect your blood sugar. So just using like half and half or cream that has no added sugar, 1 to 2 tablespoons really should not have much effect on the blood sugar. So that's what I do. I have black coffee and then add a tablespoon of half and half and no sweeteners.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. So the debate online, we can debunk that myth that it's not going to impact your blood sugar terribly if you have it on an empty stomach.
Correct. I think for most people, it will not.
Okay.
There are individual people that might have a rise, but I think on average, majority of people, if it's black coffee with no added sweeteners, shouldn't typically not affect the blood sugar.
Right. That's what we wanted to hear.
So have your coffee.
Now, what about mushroom coffee? Is it worth the hype? It's supposed to help you sleep better, reduce stress, ultimately helping with those blood sugar levels. Again, they make it sound really good, but is it actually true?
Yeah. I don't know that there's too much data to support it. I mean, I don't think it's harmful. Mushrooms have lots of vitamins and antioxidants. So I think, they're good to have in your diet. Is mushroom coffee going to, solve everything? I don't think so. I think if you're drinking it and, you feel good on it, it's probably not harmful, but I don't think that there's enough data to really say it does, all the things that some studies might suggest.
It's a bit of a big promise, I think.
Yeah.
Have you tried it before?
No, I have not.
I have, but I must admit, I still have several packets sitting on a canister on my kitchen counter because it just doesn't taste the same as coffee. Yeah. It has kind of a spicy flavor, and I think that's that cinnamon and that cardamom in it. But it's okay.
Yeah. I think it's personal preference. I mean, it does have high oxalate levels, I think. So, if you're prone to those types of kidney stones, like oxalate stones, it might not be a great idea to try. But, I think overall I don't think it's harmful for most people, but it's really, I think, personal preference.
So mushroom coffee, regular coffee, take your pick.
Yes, exactly.
Now, what are some other things, aside from, let's move on from coffee, that may raise your blood sugar levels?
Yeah. So, I tell my patients all the time, it's not just the food that we're putting into our body that can raise our blood sugar. While that is, of course, one of the major things, the types of food we're eating like we said before, the high carbs, the high sugar. But, other things absolutely affect our blood sugar. So stress, if you're under a lot of stress, your cortisol levels are higher. That increases your blood sugar and causes insulin resistance. Infection. So any illness or infection can raise blood sugar. Certain medications, especially like steroids, there's some antidepressants, antipsychotics that can affect your blood sugar. Certainly like a more sedentary lifestyle could raise your blood sugar. And like we talked about before, sleep deprivation, of course, is a big thing as well.
And that sedentary lifestyle, that's really hard to beat because most of us are working 8 hours a day. A lot of us are at desk jobs and a lot of us aren't. But for those that are, it's hard. That's why, got to get up and get moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to find like little ways to incorporate physical activity into your daily life can make a huge difference. So whether that's, always parking in like the last parking spot.
Yes, that's what I do.
You do? Okay.
My colleagues know. They're like, oh, there's Amanda. She's all the way out. But it's good because it gives me extra steps that I wouldn't otherwise get in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that little bit of physical activity that, can just keep the momentum going. Like you said, parking spot, taking the stairs wherever you are. Can you incorporate a 10-minute walk, after lunch? Just some small things that keep the momentum going can really make a difference.
And then that can also probably help with stress management too, because there's nothing like a little extra dose of sunshine, taking a walk on your lunch break can give, because we all are obviously balancing a lot of different things on our schedules, with work, with family and such. So it's nice to just have that little mental break.
Yeah. Get some vitamin D.
Yeah.
All good.
Now, what is considered a blood sugar spike? And are there consequences for a typical person?
Yeah. So a blood sugar spike is going to be when your blood sugar increases to a high level and or increases above normal and can stay there. So, what can typically triggers a blood sugar spike is high carb or high sugar meals.
Okay.
Somebody without diabetes could have a blood sugar spike, and, happening occasionally is probably not going to cause that much. It's not going to cause any really immediate symptoms or side effects, but it's when you have these persistent and recurrent elevations in blood sugar, like over and over, day after day, that leads to insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes. So like we said before, when your blood sugar spikes, your insulin levels go up to help your cells use that glucose for energy, store what's not needed. But then the sugar's still high, the insulin level is still going to be stimulated. So all that extra glucose is then stored as fat. So happening once in a while is not going to cause those consequences, but happening all the time over and over again is what is going to lead to the insulin resistance and prediabetes.
And unfortunately, weight gain too.
And weight gain, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Are there some ways to prevent these blood sugar spikes from happening?
Yeah, so I think focusing on a well-balanced diet, so meals that are higher in proteins, vegetables, healthy fats, and really limiting the carbs and added sugar. And I think another important thing is focusing on portion sizes. So sometimes we eat, everything on our plate because it's what's put in front of us. But really,
guilty.
Yeah. And a lot of our diet is so processed with added sugars that we've really lost sense of our hunger and satiety cues.
We have, yeah.
So, trying to eliminate that processed food and added sugar just helps our bodies like recalibrate to, what is hunger, what is satiety. So trying to eat slower, monitoring your portion sizes and really checking in throughout the meal. Like, am I full? Like, I don't have to eat everything that's in front of me, or I don't have to eat just because it's mealtime. So really listening to our body of, when we're hungry, when we're full. I think listening to those cues can really help, prevent some of those spikes. Staying hydrated. So that's a big thing. A lot of us don't drink enough water. So dehydration can lead to high blood sugar. So staying hydrated. And then what we talked about before, the physical activity, even just a small walk after a meal helps prevent some of the increase in your blood sugar. And helps keep it steadier throughout the day. So it can limit some of those spikes after meals.
So really being mindful as we're eating, because I know myself when I have this beautiful meal in front of me, I'm like, oh, let's just enjoy all of it. But it's not the best thing to do. it'd be better just to save some leftovers for another day.
Yes, absolutely. And trying to eat the protein and the vegetables first can be really helpful because it makes you feel full quicker. So it sends those hormones that tell your brain you're full to stop eating sooner. And the fiber in our vegetables really helps slow down the absorption of carbs. So eating those first,
Okay.
and not rushing through the meal can really help us keep those portion sizes down and help with that post-meal blood sugar spike.
That's always another challenge too, is actually just slowing down because we're, doing so many different things, rushing through, as a mom, you're, tending to the kids and all the other, emails and work that you have to, cope with throughout the day. So it's a lot to balance, but it's important. So
absolutely.
So it's natural for blood sugar to rise when you eat, but are there symptoms to watch for that may be a sign of an underlying problem? And at what point should you start the conversation with your doctor?
Yeah. So, when we eat, it is normal for blood sugars to rise. And when blood sugars rise, our pancreas releases insulin to help bring that blood sugar down by, directing glucose into your cells like we talked about before. But if your blood sugar is staying high over long periods of time, it can lead to symptoms like increase in thirst, urinating more frequently, headaches, fatigue, sometimes weight loss, unexplained weight loss. So any of those symptoms, I would definitely talk to your doctor. More severe symptoms would be like a fruity odor to your breath or nausea or vomiting that you would want to seek more urgent medical attention. But I think just if you're noticing more fatigue, feeling more thirsty, urinating a lot is a good idea to check in with your doctor and get your blood sugars tested for sure.
Start that conversation. That's
exactly
really important. That way it can be caught, early on before things worsen.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, why do some women feel warm or experience almost like a hot flash after eating a meal? And I can relate to this, especially after I have something that maybe had a little too much sugar in, maybe like a very heavy carb meal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is common. It's more common with, like you said, high carb meals. More common also after caffeine or alcohol. That can happen.
That rush.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, it's thought that the increase in blood sugar with a high carb meal, you get that stimulation in insulin, which helps bring the blood sugar down. So it's that fluctuation in blood sugar that can sometimes lead to that feeling of heat or sweating. Caffeine and alcohol also can cause vasodilation. So that can lead to that warm feeling. Even when you're eating, as your body's breaking down food, it releases heat. So that can stimulate, sort of that flushed hot feeling. But definitely more common with the higher carb meals. So if you notice that's happening, it's sort of just a trigger to just be cautious of, the foods that you're taking in. And if you are having something higher carb, to pair it with, a protein or a food that's higher in fiber that would help prevent that spike and might help with those symptoms.
So like fruit, for example, you should really have with like a protein or fat. So like apple and peanut butter or an orange with scrambled eggs, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Pairing those. I mean, even like an apple, for example, does have fiber. If you're eating the whole apple, if you're, having like a smoothie where it's all ground up fruit, you're not really getting that fiber. But, eating the whole fruit, you do get fiber with it. But pairing it with, a healthy fat like cheese or a protein, like peanut butter can help.
I'm hungry now.
Yeah.
Now, how important is it to go on a walk after eating? This is something that I strive to do. It's great when it happens. Sometimes it doesn't, especially if there's a lot going on in a day. But what can it do for your blood sugar?
So exercise is an insulin sensitizer. So it helps your body use the insulin that you have better. It helps your cells use the insulin more effectively. So going on a walk can be great for helping your body lower your glucose and use that insulin better. So there's studies that show even just a small, 10-minute walk after your meal, there was a slower rise in blood sugar and a quicker return to normal of the blood sugar.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Definitely worth the 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Go for the walk.
Absolutely.
Now, as we're continuing to talk about, women's health on this episode, let's dive into female hormones, specifically estrogen, and how that can affect blood sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. So estrogen is one of the primary female sex hormones. So, and it plays a major role in our blood sugar. So it's has an effect on your insulin sensitivity and also on the glucose metabolism itself. So estrogen is an insulin sensitizer. So it helps your cells, like exercise, be more receptive to insulin. This comes into a big role when we talk about menopause. So in menopause, you have a decrease in estrogen levels. So your body's less sensitive to insulin and can predispose you to insulin resistance. Estrogen changes throughout our lifetime, through puberty, through the menstrual cycle, through menopause. So certainly where somebody is in their, lifetime as far as their estrogen levels can affect how they're responding to insulin and affect their blood sugars. It is not the only thing. So it's one of many, many, many things that affect our blood sugars, but it's something to consider, when we're investigating why someone, is having the response that they're having in their blood sugar.
Well, that's really interesting. And I love how you said that estrogen is an insulin sensitizer. And you brought up a good point that, blood sugar can fluctuate throughout different phases of our life, which makes me wonder, specifically during your menstrual cycle, how does that fluctuate?
Yeah. So, during the first half of your menstrual cycle, it's estrogen dominant. So people tend to be more insulin sensitive. And then the second half of your cycle is higher in progesterone levels, so can be more insulin resistant during the second half of the cycle. So, I don't think that we really say to do something different during each phase of your cycle. It's still, focusing on, the healthy lifestyle and healthy diet, but can help explain sometimes those fluctuations in hunger and cravings.
That makes a lot of sense because there's times throughout my cycle that I am so much hungrier and I'm reaching for those carbs or just more sugar, especially during the specific time of the month.
Yeah.
You want that chocolate.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when you're more insulin resistant, your insulin levels are higher and insulin triggers hunger, triggers those cravings. So can certainly explain some of that.
So a lot of women have a smart device of some sort to monitor their health. That could be a smartwatch, a ring, or even their cell phone to track things like sleep, steps, activity, and heart rate. I know I love my watch. I wear it every day. It's really helpful for me. So I'm wondering, is it helpful to start regularly monitoring your blood sugar even if you don't have diabetes? Because there's a lot of discussion online that, hey, you should consider getting a glucose monitor. But is it really necessary for us that don't have diabetes?
Yeah, so I think it's individualized. So, the pancreas is so good at somebody without diabetes is so good at regulating your blood sugars that, those people who wear the continuous glucose monitors, it's going to be so tightly controlled because the pancreas is constantly adjusting your insulin level to keep your blood sugars normal. So I think for most, it might not be helpful. If you have insulin resistance though, or prediabetes, or certainly somebody with diabetes, it can be extremely helpful. It shows you what's happening with your blood sugar after your meals. You can see how different foods are affecting you. So, something that is lower in glycemic index or, overall considered maybe healthier, you could see that it actually does spike your blood sugar. So it helps you to kind of individually tailor your diet to how your body's responding to those foods. So, again, I think it's individualized. For some people, I think it could be helpful to receive that kind of real-time feedback.
Sure.
I think without a history of diabetes or insulin resistance or anything, it's gonna your body does such a good job that it's gonna be pretty steady. But any signs of insulin resistance, especially women with PCOS, I do think it could be helpful to see, how you're responding your meals. So a continuous glucose monitor is like a little sensor that goes under the arm that's monitoring your blood sugar every 5 minutes. And it shows it to you on your device. So you could see, where was your blood sugar before your meal? Where was it 30 minutes after, 2 hours after, to sort of see how that affects you. Those other devices you mentioned, the watch or the Oura Ring or things like that, it helps track activity, sleep. So I think as long as you're using that to help, move yourself forward and have it be like a positive reinforcement and not, sort of looking back and punishing yourself for
I didn't
like
get my 10,000 steps today.
Yeah. But if you can use it as, something to motivate you to reach a goal and kind of hold you accountable and track that, I think that could be hugely helpful for people.
That's great. And they even have like little challenges that you can do with one another who someone else that has like a smartwatch. I really love it. And I think it is just a tool that motivates me to get outside, get that exercise in, and also, meet that move goal and, burn those calories that I want to get.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how often should you get your blood sugar tested?
Yeah. So when we're screening for prediabetes and diabetes, we tend to use a blood test called an A1C. So, a single finger stick blood sugar or a blood sugar on a lab is really just one point in time. It doesn't tell the whole story. So an A1C is a marker of your average blood sugar over 3 months. So that is a better sort of long-term marker of what's going on with your blood sugars. So an A1C, which is recommended at the age of 40, starting at the age of 45, it's recommended to get it checked. If you're under 45 and you have a risk factor for diabetes, then it's recommended to get checked. So a risk factor would be, overweight or obesity. If you have a history of gestational diabetes, PCOS, family history of diabetes, then we'd start the screening earlier. But no, if you don't have any of those risk factors, starting at age 45, it's recommended to get an A1C. If it's normal, then about every 3 years, you would do another screening. If it's abnormal, then we check it more frequently. So if A1C less than 5.7 would be considered normal. 5.7 to 6.4 is considered pre-diabetes. So we'd probably monitor every 6 months, 6 to 12 months if you had pre-diabetes. And then 6.5 or above is consistent with type 2 diabetes. And then you'd be monitored much more frequently. And so, if we know you're in the pre-diabetes range, that's a crucial time where we can really intervene with our lifestyle modifications and education to really help reverse it, go back to the normal range and prevent the progression to diabetes. So screening is huge to really be able to catch this early and put forth those interventions that can help prevent the development of diabetes.
It all goes back to how important screening is, which brings me to my next point, because 98 million American adults have prediabetes, but the most concerning part about that is 8 out of 10 of them don't even know that they have it. So let's talk about who's at risk and how can we start reversing prediabetes if we are on the verge of having it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, prediabetes is when your blood sugar levels are higher than normal, but they're not in the diabetes range yet. And this is a crucial stage because this is where you can have a huge impact in reversing it and getting it back to normal and preventing the development of diabetes. So, in prediabetes, we have a huge emphasis on really education and really helping patients incorporate those lifestyle modifications and those eating habits that we talked about, really just incorporating it into their life. At the Diabetes and Metabolism Center, we have classes specific for pre-diabetes as well as type 2 diabetes.
What kind of classes?
So it's really focusing on looking at your diet and how can we cut out those, refined carbs, the sugars. How can we help support patients in creating a more balanced diet, higher in, proteins and vegetables and those healthy fats, helping them figure out how they can incorporate small lifestyle changes, small activity changes, I should say, into their lifestyle. So getting more active, it's hard for patients to go from no exercise to 150 minutes a week.
Yes.
How can we set small goals and really help patients reach those goals, whether it's just a 10-minute walk or, something that's attainable for them.
Sure.
So with our education classes, we have patients meet with our diabetes educators to look at diet. We also have a lifestyle medicine doc who can really help patients focus on all those other aspects we talked about, like sleep, stress management, different types of diets that might work for them. And we have health coaches. The health coaches are really helping patients implement behavioral change. So, we can say do X, Y, Z, but really helping them, incorporate into their lifestyle and making it a part of their everyday. People are their own worst enemies sometimes. It can
definitely
sabotage themselves.
Yeah. Having an accountability partner like the health coaches, that's wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's somebody to hold you accountable and help you figure out what's the barrier to doing this and how can we, break down those barriers and make those changes. So, we try to arm people with all this information so that they can lead a healthier lifestyle. So, our patients that are at higher risk for prediabetes are those that have a family history of prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. Somebody who's had a woman who's had gestational diabetes during a pregnancy, they're going to be at higher risk of developing diabetes in their lifetime. PCOS, because insulin resistance is a major component of PCOS, they're going to have higher risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. So those are definitely people we want to try to target and get the appropriate screening done for them.
That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of that. Super helpful. Because again, prediabetes, it's out there. It's prevalent. And we all have to be mindful of it so that it doesn't escalate to diabetes.
Absolutely.
When it comes to eating right for blood glucose, does time of day and order help?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. So I think when we're sitting down to eat our meal, trying to eat our proteins and our vegetables first before the carbs can be helpful. Vegetables are higher in fiber, so they're going to help slow the absorption of glucose from the carbs. So we get less of a spike after our meal. They also are a bulking agent, so they make you feel fuller. They start the process of sending those signals to the brain to say, hey, I'm full. I don't need to keep eating. So if you are filling your stomach with those more nutrient-dense foods first, you'll probably be eating less carbs. So that can help, feel full quicker, eat smaller meals, and help prevent that spike in your meal. The other thing I tell patients is try to eat your set meals per day. So whether that's 2 or 3 meals, and try, for most people, obviously you need to talk to your doctor, based on your medications and conditions. But for most people, eating your 3 set meals per day, and trying not to snack in between. So, we talked at the beginning of this too, when you eat, your blood sugar goes up, which triggers insulin release. So the insulin can direct the glucose into your cells to be used for energy. It stores what you don't need now for later. And then any excess is stored as fat. If you have this continuous stream of glucose coming in all day, you never even need to access those reserves. So you're not going to be able to lose weight. So eating the set meals, allows your blood sugar to drop between your meals, your insulin level decreases, and then when the insulin level is low, your body is able to access that stored fat for energy and converts that to energy. So allowing those insulin levels to decrease between meals is really going to help your body use your stored energy, your stored supplies better. The other thing I tell patients is try, whenever time you eat dinner, say it's 6 o'clock, then set a time. After 7 o'clock, you're not going to eat again till breakfast. So then that entire evening, you're considered in a fasted state. Your body is using your own energy stores or your own glucose stores for energy. For some people, after discussing it with their doctor, might do a more extended fast. So something called intermittent fasting, where maybe you don't eat after 7 p.m. and you have your first meal of the day at 11 a.m. So you have, 16 hours without eating, and then you eat just during an 8-hour window. during that time, it allows the insulin levels to be low. So your body is using your own fat stores for energy. And that's how it allows us to, release that stored fat to use for energy, but also can help with weight loss and lowering insulin resistance. So intermittent fasting is not right for everyone. Certainly, you need to talk with your doctor. Certain medications or medical conditions might, preclude that, but it can be a really good tool to help with insulin resistance and to help with weight loss.
And cutting off those snacking habits.
Yes, absolutely.
It's hard, but yeah, because you have that hunger memory that sticks around if you're used to snacking all the time, like myself. But that's probably why I have, would it be excess insulin? I'm not using that up because I just keep snacking throughout the day.
Yeah, and I think for some people it's habit. It's just, they're just what they're used to doing. So it's trying to come up with like new habits or just new nightly routines that doesn't have you in the pantry, but going for a walk, reading a book, tea, like a hot tea, just something else that can kind of help distract you. Most of the time, it's not true hunger in the evening. It's just cravings from, from having that elevated insulin level. So, trying to just redirect can help kind of break the habit. And then I think, again, going back to we've lost those hunger cues. Once you go through a period of cutting out, more processed food and sugar, most people notice that those cravings decrease significantly, if not go away completely.
Oh, okay. That's good news.
Yes.
Progress is possible.
Yes.
We can break bad habits together. Why are naked carbs bad for blood sugar?
Yeah. So, naked carbs are really just simple carbohydrates without anything else. So there's no fiber, there's no protein, there's no fat with it. And it just leads to a quick spike in your blood sugar, which is quick spike in your insulin. And it tends to not fill you up, often leads to more cravings. So it's usually not nutritious. So it doesn't really serve like a huge nutritious component. So trying to pair it with a protein, pair it with something higher in fiber really helps slow that rise in the blood sugar. So there's less of an insulin spike. So just kind of trying to even things out.
Like putting cottage cheese on toast.
Yeah.
So which carbs are good for you?
Yeah. So, good carbs are ones that provide a lot of nutrients, fiber. They're going to provide a lot of more sustained energy. So you want to look at things that are more whole grains, like, your quinoa, your oats, your brown rice, your white bread, your white carbs. They're really stripped of fiber. They're stripped of the nutrients. They're, they're not. They taste good.
Of course they do.
No nutritional, very little nutritional value. So trying to really use the whole grain. The other thing is something, when oat is, converted into a flour, when you're breaking down these whole grains into a flour, your body doesn't have to work as hard to break it down, so they can spike your blood sugars more. So really trying to keep the grains in their whole form is healthier for you, more nutrient dense, and less of an effect on your blood sugar. So, eating those whole grains in their whole form. Legumes like beans, chickpeas, peas, they're a good source of protein and fiber. Fruits like berries, apples. Like I said, apples have that fiber, in them. Those can be a good source of, those have sugar in them, but they're, natural sugars. It's the added sugars that really affect the blood sugar more. And then your non-starchy vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, peppers, carrots, cucumbers, all of those are good, healthy carbs. And then if you have to have, processed grains, doing more whole wheat, whole grain, like whole wheat pasta, whole wheat bread, if you have to have that.
Oh, okay. Great tips.
Yeah.
And going back to that saying of if it's white, you should avoid it, correct?
I think everything in moderation. It's true that they're more processed. They're going to, have a bigger effect on your blood sugar and your insulin level. I think saying something is all bad and you should never have it probably is not sustainable, but everything in moderation. So keeping the sort of treat foods, the celebration foods, just at a minimum.
For a special occasion.
Exactly. Never say never, just, in moderation.
Fried okra, well, anything fried is delicious, let's be honest. But this is something new, okra water. Apparently soaking okra pods in water is now a health trend on TikTok. There are claims that it may support weight loss, keep you hydrated, and even manage blood sugar, as we're talking about. Is this true?
Well, I don't think there's any magic fixes to managing blood sugar. Okra has a lot of antioxidants, vitamins, anti-inflammatory benefits. So I don't think it's harmful. Is it the answer to regulating your blood sugar? Probably not. I think eating a well-balanced diet of fruits and vegetables can give you the same vitamins and minerals. Certainly it promotes increase in water intake, which is always good for our health. So, I'm for that. Does it have to be okra water? No.
It can just be regular water.
Regular water is fine. I mean, I don't think it's harmful. I just don't think it's the, magic bullet answer to preventing diabetes or high blood sugar.
What about those electrolyte packets? Are those important?
I would be cautious that if there's added sugar in them. So some of them can contain, a lot of sugar. But sugar-free ones, particularly somebody who exercises a lot, who's sweating a lot, can be helpful to add. But again, just being careful of added sugar in those packets.
Yeah, avoiding the ones with added sugar.
Yes.
Okay. So okra water, not necessarily the answer to all things blood sugar. However, what about supplements? Maybe alpha-lipoic acid?
Mm-hmm. Well, alpha-lipoic acid is a compound that is an antioxidant in the body. It's been studied for its potential effects on blood sugar, but, I think more research is really needed to say, to confirm its effectiveness. But in studies, it shows that it can improve insulin sensitivity. Some studies show its use in reducing peripheral neuropathy. Again, I don't think there's enough data to definitively say it helps. I think it's probably not harmful. But is it, again, the magic answer? I don't think so.
Okay. And what about apple cider vinegar? Because I've seen things where, if you drink 2 tablespoons right before a meal, that it can help with blood sugar regulation. Is it real? Is it not?
I guess probably it's individualized to people. I mean, I think just focusing on a balanced diet with that meal could also help regulate your blood sugar just as much with that meal than having to add, all these supplements.
Extra supplements. So it goes back to, we don't have to add all of these excess things like okra water or another supplement. More so, it goes back to that whole foods approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And getting that exercise, staying hydrated, all of those things.
Yes, absolutely. I think that, it's the cumulative effects of doing that every day that's going to, provide the most success.
Now, what is the blood sugar diet? And is it a good plan for some people?
So there are so many different diets out there.
Too many.
Yes. The blood sugar diet is one, that was, it focuses heavily on a very low calorie diet and emphasis on fasting. So I find that those really restrictive diets, while in the short term they can be effective, they're really not the long-term solution. So when we look at, all different types of diets out there, there's not necessarily one that's better than another for weight loss. It's really what can you sustain? Like what for your lifestyle and your culture and your, goals in life, like which can you sustain long term? That's really going to be the most success. So I think the more restrictive ones are harder to stick with.
Sure.
So we try to encourage patients to make more small changes that they can, more regularly, incorporate in their everyday life, and they could see themselves doing, a year from now. The blood sugar diet is a very intense 8-week diet plan. So I think for those, if you can follow it, it can be effective in those, short 8 weeks. But then what happens 6 months from then, a year from then, we encourage patients to find diets that are more, not necessarily diet, but more lifestyle changes that are more sustainable for them.
Because when you stop the diet,
It's a lot of yo-yoing. Yeah.
Yep. You start it, then you stop, and then you deal with the weight gain again or all the other issues that you're dealing with. So it's just it's an endless cycle. So that's why it's better to do things in small steps, things that are actually attainable.
Yeah, because it's very restrictive. So it's like extremely low carb, it focuses on what we're talking about, focuses on high protein, high vegetables, healthy fats, but in such an extreme way that it's hard to be sustainable.
What about eating according to the glycemic index? This sounds like something that may be a little too much for some. How's this done? Are there proven health benefits?
Yeah. So, the glycemic index is a scale that ranks carbohydrates in to how much it affects your blood sugar. And it usually, is comparing it, a reference is either, glucose or white bread. So, you eating according to the glycemic index, you're going to be eating carbohydrates that have a less of an effect on your blood sugar. So I think it can be, certainly can be helpful. Foods that are lower on the glycemic index are, your non-starchy vegetables, your whole grains, your nuts, your seeds, your chickpeas, beans, things like that, or have a lower glycemic index. So less of an increase in your blood sugar after your meals. And, again, that's important because less of a spike in your blood sugar is less of a spike in your insulin. Your higher glycemic index foods are going to be your more simple carbs and sugar and things like that aren't as nutrient dense and then also have a higher spike in your blood sugar. So I do think it can be helpful, looking at the glycemic index of foods and just trying to help guide you to the healthier carbs.
For everyone, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Recently, there's been a warning from the TikTok health community to stay away from oat milk. And this kind of breaks my heart because we have oat milk in our fridge and we use it for a lot of things because my husband's dairy free. So, you gotta, if you want to have hot chocolate, you gotta have something. So, but I guess because it scores so high on the glycemic index, again, the TikTok health community, very upset about oat milk. Do we really need to be worried about oat milk drastically raising our blood sugar?
So no, I don't, I think that it is moderate to high on the glycemic index, but, its impact on your blood sugar really depends on what else you're eating it with. For somebody who's lactose free, they need an alternative.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fine alternative. There's other nutrients, also in the oat milk that are good for you. It's rarely, used in isolation. Usually it's, with fruit, used in a smoothie or, eaten with another protein or another fat that can really help taper that rise in the blood sugar. So, I don't think it's all or nothing. I don't think it's all bad. I think it's, absolutely can be used as part of a healthy diet as a milk alternative. I mean, milk itself does have sugar in it as well. So nothing is, none of those things are completely sugar-free. So, again, it does have a high glycemic index, but when it's used as part of a healthy, well-balanced diet, I think it's fine.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of the spectrum, what about things that are unsweetened, or at least they say they're unsweetened? So this is besides oat milk, other, drinks, foods, where they sneak certain things in, marketed as unsweetened, but there's actually like super sugars in these things. They're just hidden with a different name.
Yes. So, sugar alternatives like artificial sweeteners, while they might not have as much of an effect on blood sugar, they can raise insulin levels. So I think it's all in moderation and, how else you're incorporating it into your diet. So, eating it with more well-balanced meals shouldn't have a huge effect on your blood sugar, but just being careful of, the added sugars or the added sugar alternatives, that it is in moderation and, not overdoing it.
Simply being mindful of everything that we are taking in, whether that's food, beverage, whatever. To wrap up today's episode, what are the best ways to be mindful of your blood sugar in order to prevent prediabetes?
So I think, focusing on a balanced and healthy lifestyle is key. I think for most of the time, avoiding foods that have added sugars or processed carbs, I think it's not all or nothing, but most of the time to try to focus your diet on more healthy vegetables, proteins, healthy fats, and avoiding those added processed carbs and sugar is ideal. Trying to incorporate exercise into your life, like we said, doesn't have to be all or nothing, but picking something small that you think is attainable and trying to incorporate that into your lifestyle. I think important to prioritize sleep. So we make sure we're getting enough sleep every night, and that being screened for sleep disorders if there is something going on with our sleep, and stress management. I think that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's sort of picking little ways you can improve your lifestyle every day. I think having a plan. So I tell patients kind of pick like what's something you can commit to, like one dietary change, one, physical activity that you think you can commit to. Write it down. That's going to be your goal. And it doesn't have to be, major, but just a small change, and try to do that every day. Once that's comfortable for you, once you've incorporated that into your lifestyle, then add something else. So it's making these small changes that over time, I think, can add up. For some patients, it's meal planning. Like we'll say, okay, pick a day of the week that you will plan out, 3 or 4 meals for that week. I think it's a daunting task to say I'm going to plan every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the next 7 days.
A little overwhelming, but small steps, start with, maybe Friday at the end of the week.
Can you plan 3 lunches this week where you're going to bring something, or 3 dinners that you're going to make and not, get takeout or whatever they normally do. So trying to figure out small goals. And once you've set that goal, like, do you think you can do it? Like a scale of 1 to 10, it should be like an 8, 9, 10, like that you think you can stick with it.
Okay.
And then, once they're doing that, more regularly, then what else can we add? What other small goals can we add? And it's just kind of building on that really, then you look back and you have made all these changes that, wasn't so daunting once you kind of broke it down and did it one at a time. So I think, trying to focus on, what are those small changes that you can make and really incorporate into your lifestyle. And we have at the Diabetes Center educators that, help patients figure out where can they make substitutions in their diet, where can they make these changes. The health coaches help them with these behavioral changes. So whether you have prediabetes or diabetes, we can help you, make these lifestyle changes and kind of incorporate it into your life.
It goes back to that habit stacking,
yes.
as you were saying.
Absolutely.
We start with one thing and then you keep building.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scholten. This has been wonderful. We have learned so much. It has been great having you here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
To learn more health tips, visit lvhn.org/healthyyou. Remember to subscribe to or follow the Healthiest You wherever you get your podcast so you never miss an episode. And remember, be safe, be smart, and be the healthiest you.